Man, when Daniel Cormier fell short of beating Jon Jones in their first light heavyweight title bout, it really felt like that was it for him in terms of any legacy. I mean, he won a single round. There was no question afterwards who was better. And what was DC going to do? Everybody knew he was great, but the idea of beating Jon seemed impossible now. And his best friend and training partner was still heavyweight champion, so he wasn't going to be moving up. Where was he going to go in his career at 35 years old? Well, sometimes in mixed martial arts, circumstances entirely outside of anything you had planned come around and grant the opportunity of a lifetime. In the case of our number 10 entry, Daniel Cormier, that was Jon Jones getting stripped of the title for his hit and run. So with the literal only hurdle in his way cleared, Cormier, who was granted an immediate shot at the vacant gold, became champion, and of course would go on to be a double champ after his best friend cleared out at heavyweight, becoming an all-time great and UFC Hall of Famer. A legacy entirely made possible, at least initially, by random chance. And that is what we're talking about today. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and these are 10 massive opportunities that just fell into fighters' laps. Number 9, Randy Couture. When people say they make their own luck, what they really mean is that they put themselves in a position to get lucky, because by its very nature, you can't make your own luck. That's just stupid. But Randy Couture is a great example of what I hope they mean, because while his fortune in this entry was serendipitous, the only reason he got lucky is because he was one of the UFC's greatest champions up to that point, and old. That helped too, and being on a 2-fight losing streak, surprisingly. So it's 2003, and Tito Ortiz is just flat out refusing to defend his light heavyweight title against clear number 1 and big money fight Chuck Liddell. The UFC feels that a great way to put pressure on him would be for the first time ever crowning an interim champion, hopefully big money Chuck. But who to put him against? Any obvious 205er he'd already beat. How about our old, washed up former heavyweight champion with name recognition that's lost twice recently and never fought at 205 before, Randy Couture? Really an absolutely genius plan, minus Couture TKOing Chuck and ruining everything. Randy would take this gifted opportunity and turn it into becoming the first multi-division champion in UFC history. Number 8, Chael Sonnen. There's being gifted a title shot, and then there's what happened to Chael Sonnen as a result of UFC 151. The avenues for Sonnen to add to his legacy by August of 2012 were pretty damn slim. The month previous, he'd lost his massive rematch to Anderson Silva pretty soundly, and so a move to light heavyweight was the plan. But the idea of ever getting a bout with Jon Jones, or beating him for that matter, felt like fairy tale stuff at that point. Sonnen hadn't even fought at 205 in 7 years. A nice little bout with Forrest Griffin was possibly in the works, a fight that made absolute sense for where Chael was in his career. Then his teammate Dan Henderson pulled out of UFC 151 days before a title challenge against Jones. The UFC scrambled and asked every relevant 205-pound contender to fill in, but they all declined. And so a proven draw, Sonnen was asked to take the spot, and he accepted, only for Jon to turn around and reject the bout, getting the whole show canceled. But Chael wasn't about to let a main event that fell into his lap go, and so he started a campaign against Jones that would lead to the two coaching tough and a title shot coming off a loss in a division he'd not seen in nearly a decade. He didn't win, but that it happened at all is pure American gangster. Number 7, Dominick Cruz. Jose Aldo was set to challenge Henry Cejudo for bantamweight gold as the main event of UFC 250, but a series of events kicked off by the largest crisis in recent human history would instead lead to an unbelievable opportunity for Dominick Cruz. After the world got Pandusky, the UFC was forced to move 250, now 249, to the United States. No big deal, except both main eventers Khabib Nurmagomedov and Jose Aldo couldn't come anymore due to travel restrictions. This is fine, we'll just do an interim title fight between Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson. There's one problem solved, but who is going to challenge Cejudo? Luckily, there were some good options in the top 5, like Aljamain Sterling or Corey Sandhagen. You know what though? How about entirely unranked Dominick Cruz, who was coming back from nearly 4 years off due to injuries following the loss of his title to Cody Garbrandt? Hey, desperate times, you know? What other options did they have? And so Dom Cruz would, for no particular reason at all, compete and fall short in the final title bout of his career. Maybe he's coming back again soon, maybe Font will drop out and they'll give him Marab. Number 6, Amanda Nunes. When Holly Holm defeated Ronda Rousey in front of 56,000 people, I didn't think that would lead to Amanda Nunes headlining 2 million plus buy pay-per-view events. To get there though, man, did we need some stuff to happen. First, Holm decided to defend her title instead of waiting for the Ronda rematch, and then she lost it it to Miesha Tate, who was now set to take on Rousey. But Ronda's return schedule was still not working for the UFC, so they put Tate against Amanda Nunes, assuming the 3-1 favorite would win. It would lend more credibility to the Rousey trilogy fight, and hey, another title bout to throw on the undercard for our super giant UFC 200 show. Then Conor McGregor no-showed a press conference for the event and was dropped as its headliner. Then Jon Jones got USADA'd and ruined the new main event. And so with the only title fight left on the card, by default, Tate and Nunes were the new headliners, despite Brock fucking Lesnar being on the card. As a result of the Beast Incarnate, the event would sell over 1 million buys, and Nunes would shockingly win the title, setting her up for the biggest return bout in UFC history against Ronda, who she kicked the shit out of, stacking up yet another 1 million buy event that she marqueed. Amanda would go on to do some other stuff too, I think. Number 5, Dan Henderson. I cannot imagine that Dan Henderson thought that it was possible to hit Michael Bisping so hard that it would lead to a title opportunity 7 years later. In the summer of 2016, Old Man Dan was in the twilight of his career, to say the least. He'd lost 3 of his last 4, he was coming up on 46 years old, and he'd said on Fight Week that he was considering retiring after his bout with Hector Lombard at UFC 199. But Hendo would viciously KO Lombard out of nowhere. That alone might have extended his career another bout, but it certainly wouldn't have ever landed the number 13 fighter in the division in a title fight. Unless, of course, one of the biggest upsets of all time happened in the main event on the same card, and the guy who pulled it off, who had his career defined up to that point by you knocking him out, was suddenly the champion of that division. But wouldn't you know, that's exactly what happened, and when Bisping asked for a rematch with Henderson as his first defense, the UFC was like, yeah, fuck the rankings, that sounds fun. Dan would nearly win this title bout that fell right into his lap in a very close one, and retired afterwards in the cage, passing what was left of his incredible late career fortune onto Michael, who somehow landed a super fight with George St. Pierre as a result of Tyron Woodley stinking up the joint so bad in a win over Damian Maia that they shifted gears and gave the GSP fight to Bisping. What a wild series of events, all of it, but it does not compare to number 4, Al Iaquinta. Raging Al, number 11 in the division, was set to take on unranked Paul Felder, Iaquinta's first fight in a year. Habib was, of course, meant to headline for vacant gold against Tony Ferguson. Well, first, Ferguson would trip on a production cable and his knee would implode. As a last-second replacement, featherweight champion Max Holloway was brought in. Perfect. Now, time for a side plot. The Thursday before the event, Conor McGregor flew a gang of ruffians to New York from Ireland to, I guess, felony assault Habib Nurmagomedov for grabbing the back of Conor's then best friend Artem Lobov's head, who was mad at Habib for calling McGregor a chicken 2 years earlier, and so Artem said that he was actually the chicken, which forced the confrontation. But Conor got to the presser a bit late, like he always does, and so he improvised by attacking a bus. Put that in the back of your mind. It'll come up again soon. The day before the card, New York deems Holloway medically unfit. Well, shit, I guess it's time for the highest ranked lightweight on the card, Michael Chiesa, to step up to the plate. Unfortunately, Conor's bus bashing caused glass to cut Chiesa. See, I told you it would be important. As a result, he was out. Paul Felder tried to step up, but New York was like, bro, you're not even ranked. No. The title opportunity then went to Anthony Pettis, but he wasn't on champion weight in his first attempt, so he'd have to try again. Except he decided not to at all, for some fucking reason. With literally no other options, the UFC asked Raging Al if he wanted the opportunity of a lifetime, even though he was off champ weight by 0.2 pounds. But it's okay, Dana said if he won, he'd be the champion anyway because the rules mean nothing. Despite a valiant effort, Raging Al would get demolished and never see another title fight again. Number 3, Mickey Gall. How about the most powerful person in the entire sport randomly showing up to your professional debut at some podunk-ass regional show with an attendance of 50 and offering you a contract? Dana White's Looking for a Fight is like the Contender Series meets Top Gear, with Dana and friends traveling around, getting into adventures, and looking for fighters to highlight and sign to the UFC. In the second ever episode, White and the boys were at Dead Serious MMA 17 in Philly, but the guy they were scouting turned out to be a dud. Our man Mickey, though, got a first-round sub in his professional debut, and knowing that Dana was there, took the microphone afterwards to call out recent UFC signing CM Punk.
Oh, I'd love to fight that man, CM Punk,
who was also pretty short on pro bouts, as in 0. If there's anything that Dana White loves, it's people randomly shooting their shots when he's not expecting them to. And so Gall was signed to the UFC, put in a bout with Mike Jackson that the UFC assumed he would win, which he did, setting him up for the big CM Punk fight later that year that Gall would win easily. And the dude just last fought in November. I mean, he literally created an entire career out of thin air because Dana White happened to be making a YouTube video. Number 2, Steve Jenham. There are exactly 7 men in human history who can say that they won one of the classic single-night UFC openweight tournaments that took place from 1993 to 1996. Don Fry, Mark Coleman, Dan Severn, Marco Huas, Oleg Taktarov, Royce Gracie, and Steve Jenham? Steve Jenham. Yep, sandwiched in between Royce's 3 legendary UFC tournament victories sits a man who would end up with a career record of 2-3. He has the unique distinction of being the only classic openweight tournament winner to do so by competing in a single bout. Jenham was the second alternate for UFC 3 and was unneeded after the quarterfinal round, as first alternate Felix Mitchell was given Keith Hackney's semifinal bout with Ken Shamrock. In the other bracket, 2-time winner Royce Gracie, exhausted from his first bout of the night with Kimo Leopoldo, would throw in the towel before the start of his second round fight with Harold Howard, because remember kids, you can't lose if you quit first. This would place Howard in the finals with a bye, essentially. Shamrock would submit Mitchell to earn a spot in the finale as well, but when he got wind that Royce wasn't going to do it, he didn't want to do it either. The only man left who hadn't yet been defeated because he hadn't yet fought was Steve Jenham. The fresh ninjutsu fighter, yes, you heard me right, would get a stoppage in less than 90 seconds and become the second ever winner of a UFC tournament. As a result of Jenham waltzing into the finals without breaking a sweat, all subsequent alternates would be required to have qualifying matches. Number 1, Seth Petruzelli. In literally no other scenario than what occurred does fighter Seth Petruzelli headline a fight on network television. It just literally was not possible. This was not someone who was even close to a main event in a major promotion. You're talking about a guy who didn't even get to fight on the finale of the season of The Ultimate Fighter that he competed on, and beyond that, he had 2 UFC bouts over the next 2 years, both of which he lost. Petruzelli was back on the local Florida regional scene, where he was picked up for the prelims of Elite XC Heat, which just happened to be taking place in Florida as well. Headlining this card that was airing on CBS was none other than Kimbo Slice at the height of his popularity and the legendary Ken Shamrock. But hours before the show, Ken would get a cut on his brow and California canceled the bout. With no other real options to save this massively important event, Petruzelli was chosen as Shamrock's replacement. 4.56 million people would watch Petruzelli knock out Kimbo Slice. And this massive opportunity came to Petruzelli simply because he lived in Florida. And they thought he'd be the best matchup for Kimbo to beat, and may or may not have allegedly told Seth in an unconfirmed statement to not go for takedowns allegedly. Don't worry guys, he didn't need them in order to completely collapse your entire organization. And neither does the editor of this video, Luke Taylor. Fists of stone, this man. Please follow him on all his socials and go check out his awesome YouTube channel. A big ol' shout out to our channel members. You guys are the real MVPs. We've streamlined membership. Now it's all just one price. Get videos early, watch our live writers meetings. It is a great time. Like and subscribe if you're a ninjutsu master like Steve Jenham. Leave a comment about a time an opportunity fell into your lap. And thank you so much for watching, fight fans. I will see you on the next one.